Welcome back, listeners. We're here for another guest episode. And today I have Juliana. She is originally from Kansas, but now she is in LA helping so many busy professional creatives get organized. She has her own company, the Space Camp Organizing. She's been featured in New York Times and has a partnership with the Container Store. So you're in for a treat in talking to her today. When I did we do all these meetings ahead of having a guest on. And so I already got to hear her spiel and her tips. So I got my desk organized. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, you saw how much cleaner that was. And I was just raving about it, Juliana, for, I don't know, a week or two for anyone that would listen of like, now I walk by my office and I want to go in there and I want to write. Like it was amazing the impact it had of like, actually like drawing me in, not just an aesthetically like clear space, but like even just sparking that interest of like being in that space. And do you see that with your other clients? Is that a normal reaction?
Oh, very much so. I mean, I think an organized space looks better, and that's what we show on Instagram. That's what you see on TV shows and in magazines and stuff. But the feel of it is 10 times better than what it looks like, honestly. And the feel of it is what sort of is a little addictive and will keep you going and keep you wanting to maintain it. And you feel so much clearer. And something we'll get into is, as a creative person, I find that you need that feeling of clarity, of groundedness, of a little space in your brain to be able to let creativity to come through and to be able to do whatever your art is. And so you experienced it firsthand. And that's why I have a business. People experience it every day, and it really is life-changing.
How did you get into organizing?
Well, long story short, it all happened super naturally. So I am originally from Kansas, like you said. I studied film in high school and really enjoyed it. So I eventually made my way out to USC Film School, got a degree there, went into producing and hosting, and did that that was my first career really, and did that for many years and still do some of that. I did cooking shows, some organizing content, DIY, all that kind of stuff, sort of Martha Stewart-y stuff. In between shows, the way it would work is I would get hired for a project and would work for anywhere from a few days to a few months. And then I'd have some downtime to look for my next project. And so I also was a freelance assistant for a bunch of different busy creatives and professionals in LA. And that sort of naturally started the organizing because they needed a little bit of help, or I would help someone move. And then I'd end up just kind of unpacking their kitchen or unpacking their closet for them as an assistant. And they were like, oh, you're good at this. They'd tell a friend, I do it for them. Eventually, I started calling it organizing. And then over the course of, I've been doing it for over 10 years. After about 3 or 4 years, I started having friends help me just so we could get done a little bit more quickly, and then hired my first employees. And then eventually 5 years ago, I decided to name the business Space Camp Organizing. So fast forward, that is where we are today.
Now, I think there's probably a misconception that you have to be type A to be good at organizing or to even know how to organize. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I would say that most organizers that I have met are really type A. And in some ways I am, because I am organized in certain ways. Like, growing up, if I was on a school project, I probably would take charge with everyone else and be like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. But I also think you think of type A people as like super tidy, super kind of like anal retentive about certain things. And that is definitely not how I am in a lot of ways. I like to be organized in my own home because it brings me a sense of joy and peace and all of that. But I also am not super crazy about things being done perfectly. And I think that makes me a good business owner and me a good organizer, because I can empathize with how people are instead of just walking into their house and being like, oh, I'm disgusted at what this is. I'm like, oh yeah, my house looks like this too sometimes. But I have learned from experience and I have learned from practice that there is a better way. And there are actual functional reasons why you might want to change these systems. But also understand that if something is working for someone, I don't need to change it just because it might make me feel uncomfortable. So that also then proves to me that anyone who wants to get organized can get organized. You don't have to naturally be a type A person to let organization really transform your life.
And what are some of the differences that you've seen between like helping creatives get organized versus either helping, just general professionals get organized or what you see represented on like organizing shows, like the home edit? What is it that's like different, nuanced, or special about organizing for creatives that we as writers maybe should be aware of?
Absolutely. And organizing for creatives, first of all, is my favorite type of person to organize for because I think that they get so much out of organization. And they have always, I think, often thought that organizing might not be for them because they're like, well, no, I want to be able to see all my stuff, or I thrive in a slightly messier environment, or I like having all of these books around me if I'm a writer because I use them. I never know what one I'm going to want to pull because all of a sudden it strikes me that I want to look something up, and I get that. And I actually think there's a lot of beauty in that. So what I say is, especially for writers, we organize for a lot of writers here in Los Angeles, like a lot of Hollywood writers. It's that it's hard for you to get organized sometimes too, because you see the value in all of the little things that you have. Like you see the value in the 100 books that you have on your bookshelf. You see the value if you're a painter in all the different supplies that you have, because you're like, well, what if I might need to use this? Or maybe I need to hang on to this in case. You see the beauty, and it's like your creative brain is telling you, oh my gosh, I could do this with this and this with this and this with this and this with this. And then before you know it, you're buried under all this stuff. And then you don't feel like doing any of your creative work because you have no space in which to do it. And so it's sort of like this snake eating its own tail a little bit, where you can go round and round in circles as a creative person. And you need someone to break that pattern for you, or you need someone to teach you how to do it so that you can be like, okay, there is a difference between something I might reference to do my art and something that is just it's not, I'm hanging on to it out of guilt or out of fear or out of shame or whatever it is. And learning to separate that and draw that line in the sand. And then as like you experienced clearing off your desk, right? I didn't say to you, you're bad for having too much stuff on your desk. You're doing it wrong. Like, you should be ashamed of yourself. I was like, maybe you'd feel better if you had a little bit more space and enjoyed sitting down at your desk. And I think approaching it, like turning that on its head and approaching it in a positive way and reinforcing the fact that like, you know how to do it, but you have all kinds of other stuff to do. So of course you hadn't done it yet. There's nothing wrong with having a messy desk, but maybe you'll enjoy your craft more if you had some space. That already gets you in a positive framework and mindset to do it. And then you can start the process of, I actually think I could let go of this, or maybe I don't need this here. Maybe this can be stored in my basement or in my garage. And slowly you start to figure out what is bringing you joy, what's bringing you inspiration, and what's actually weighing you down. And that's such a beautiful process. And then creative people are really smart and really creative. So once you like get that under your belt, then you're just off to the races. And I'm sure it's sort of, did you feel like when you were doing your desk, you like started to get the hang of it and you built momentum and you were like, oh, I get the hang of this. And then it felt easier and more fun as you went?
Oh, for sure. And I literally only just did my desk, which is just this one. I have a corner desk. So it's this one corner of this room. And so I had a couple of things on the surface. I had kind of a junky single drawer. And so it really was a small project, very like bite size that I could tackle in one sitting, in one go. And I ended up like using a side table that originally was just empty, but just the kind of placeholder for the lamp in this guest bedroom. And I took advantage of the drawers and everything. on that. I found as I was going through my desk some like artwork that I had from forever ago. And during a move, I'd taken them out of the frames and like slipped it into a notebook so they wouldn't get bent up. And I have since gotten rid of the frames. They were bigger and bulkier, but I put up the artwork around this space, and that's made a huge difference. And then it's not that I had stuff on the desk that was like taking up usable space. Like because it's the corner desk, it's like very deep and there's plenty of spaces that I just can't reach. So I had some books lined up there, but taking those away and putting them like a little bit out of my line of sight, at least when I'm like working on my computer, has created more space from just a visual standpoint, right? There's less like visual clutter and distraction. And I simply have moved them from like directly in front of me, like behind the computer here to off to the side. So like they're not even hardly in my periphery at this point. They're still here. I can still quickly reference them, but they're just not as like visually distracting. And yeah, once I just got moving a little bit, I was able to find homes for things. And then I even developed a little micro system because I do, these podcast interviews here and I take notes during our initial meetings. And so then I just hung this whole like stack of notes off to the side. These used to just be strewn across my desk or like in the drawer, but now I've got them organized in the order of like the different recordings and they're here ready to go. So the first one, I just take it like straight off the little like clothespin I have over here. And it makes it
Amazing.
So much easier.
That's the domino effect that I think is so neat is you started with one sort of task of like, okay, I'm going to get rid of anything that's not really like bringing me joy here. That's not really functional, that's cluttering up the space. And then from there, you created lots of different solutions for yourself that actually help you functionally. And so that's something that I think is so cool and beautiful about organizing for creatives is like sometimes an aesthetic decision will then lead you to think about how you can function better in your space as well, and vice versa. Sometimes you start organizing to make function better. That's how we do it with our clients usually. People come to us with a problem where they're like, okay, we can't get out of the door on time because we can never find our backpacks, or I haven't been cooking dinner enough because the pantry is so full that I'm overwhelmed just going in it. So we start with then a functional thing. But then I find that once you solve that functional issue, if you can take it a step further and make it aesthetically beautiful or do it in a way that really works for your eye and your brain, you are so much more likely to keep it organized because then you enjoy the process of looking at it, the process of looking by it or walking by it, the process of using it. Like it all is so intertwined. And, we're in our homes. Some of us are in our homes 24 hours a day if you're a stay-at-home mom or you work from home. Some of us, even if we work outside the home, you're in your house for 14, 16 hours a day. Why not make it both function for you and look beautiful for you? I feel like so many of us just like spend years of our life in spaces that we sort of just feel okay about. And it really doesn't take that much time, that much money, that much effort in the grand scheme of things to really level your space up. And ultimately, it saves you a lot of time and brings you a lot more enjoyment.
So based off of your experience working with a number of creatives, what have been some like strokes of genius you could give as examples of like ways that you've helped them organize or see their stuff differently? Whether that's relegating certain supplies, craft supplies to different areas or even donating them so that they get used maybe in like, I don't know, give us some examples if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, that's fun. Okay, I have to think about this. So, okay, the first example that comes to mind when you ask that is we organized for a painter once. And her studio had been moved into a bedroom in a home. And it was pretty cluttered. And she was trying to do her work there because she had a show coming up, but she was having a hard time feeling inspired. So we came in, we cleared everything out with her. And then my team came up with a really beautiful, because she's so visual, right? And so we needed to store her paints, we needed to store her canvases, her collage materials, all this different stuff. And we got these wooden boxes from IKEA that were very inexpensive, just like plain wood, and stored the paint in them by color. And then instead of using a label maker, one of my team members had the brilliant idea to just take some of the paint and just paint like a swatch of color on the front of each of the boxes. So then visually you walk in and you see each one by color. And it was just like, it was so cool and so beautiful. And it was our client's favorite part of the space. And it was just an example of like, oh yeah, it's both smart. It probably took less time than typing on a label. And it was beautiful and it was cool and sort of meta to use the material that you're storing in the labeling of the storage. So that's
And
one
for her
example of,
yeah, for her to find it, she's not having to read these words like blue, blue, where's blue? Like you can just visually go straight to it. I mean, from a time saving perspective, that's amazing too.
well, and just exactly. And I think it's just finding ways to communicate with people in the way that they communicate. And so many creative people are very visual. And, another example, this is a little bit different, but kids are super creative, right? And that's something that could be a whole other podcast. I know we both have kids, but
Yeah.
so many parents are worried about ruining their kids' creativity by limiting them too much. But then at the same time, they're like, they never go into their playroom or they don't want to play in their room because it feels too cluttered, it feels too crowded. And I'm like, well, exactly. That's the exact same thing. The same premise as organizing for creative adults is because you want to be able to have enough to use and to work with to be able to feel creative. But if you have too much, then you don't want to be in there. You'd rather just go sit somewhere else. You'd go back, when I was studying as a high schooler or college student, I wouldn't want to study in my room. I would want to go to like a library where I could have a big, open, clear table. And that made me really be able to relax and focus and open up my brain. It's same with kids playing. And so we love to clear out playrooms, get rid of broken toys, mismatched toys, things that they've outgrown developmentally, that kind of stuff. But then one of my favorite things to do is when we're storing toys, we keep a little like Polaroid printer with us in our organizing kit. And we can print pictures of each category of toy and put that on the outside of the bin. So if it's a basket of balls, we have a picture of all the little colored balls that we put on there. If it's Legos, same with that. Building blocks, everything. And it both looks really fun and handmade, which just enhances the beauty of the space, but it also allows kids that don't read yet or who are playing too fast or working too fast to even want to read. If they can, they see it, they match up the thing with it, it becomes a game in and of itself, and then it's fun. So I think even as we become adults, especially as creative adults, not losing the fun of it. And if there's a fun way to label something, if there's a fun way to store something, if there's a beautiful way to store something that's going to excite you and get you to keep the system up, I say go for it. It's like totally worth it because, I mean, who says you have to do it the same way everyone else does it,
Right. So for writers, I just have to assume that most of what we are affording are books. What are some of your tips and tricks about addressing your books? Whether, I've seen some people like do the beautiful rainbow, which is aesthetically pleasing, but I haven't memorized the colored spine of each of my favorite books, so I don't know how I would find them again. Like that's visually appealing.
Totally.
But, I don't know how functional that really is. How do you help people either slim down the books that they need available to them, in close proximity versus those they can put somewhere else? Or what's your tips around books?
So we actually just organized for a writer. He's a writer and a director. And I had done his closet, his like work closet 5-6 years ago. And then he moved and we just did a brand new one. And everyone is personal, right? So it's like for him, he does need a lot of books because he is going to reference them. And some of them are out of print. Some of them are hard to find. And I know that he references them. So for me, it's like, okay, let's cover an entire wall and shelves and let's just organize those books. Because at the end of the day, they don't take up that much space. If you have the space and you have the means to store them and you are going to reference them, who cares? Keep them, right? But if you are holding on to books because you feel like you should have them or someone gave them to you, or maybe you inherited a whole library from someone else, I do say it's worth the mental energy to go through and just see what you get excited about, right? Like take out all your books, put them on the floor, and just look at them. And if it's like, maybe have a yes, a maybe, and a no pile. Because sometimes you'll be like, oh no, someone gave me this and I hated it. I don't want it. Like, you don't even want the energy of it in your space. You don't want to have to, have the mental energy that it takes to remember that you own it, if that makes sense. I believe subconsciously that we catalog everything we own in our brains, whether we are aware of it or not. And it takes up mental energy and it takes up physical energy. And so I'm like, if you really don't like something, why would you want that in your space? Like, it doesn't make sense. If it makes you feel icky to look at it every single time you see it, get it out. So have your no pile, have your maybe pile, have your yes pile, right? And once you get into the flow of sorting, it becomes almost like second nature. And subconsciously, oh, that's a maybe, that's a no, that's a yes, that's a no. Sometimes your conscious will catch up to you and be like, oh, wait, I put that in no, but maybe that's a maybe. And then you'll start second guessing yourself. Trust your subconscious. That's what I say. Like, trust your subconscious, but like, if you must, move it back to maybe, and you'll figure it out later, right? Like, there's no right or wrong answer. So then depending on what you're left with, when you have your yeses and nos and your maybes, then decide maybe the maybes can stay for a while. If you have plenty of space on a shelf, or you have the means to add a whole wall of bookshelves or whatever it is, keep it. It's not hurting anyone. You can always get rid of it later. And then if you are someone who references your books a lot, I would definitely suggest organizing them either by type, by alphabetically, by category. So for the director we just organized for, we like to do it categorically for him. So it's like, okay, film studies books and comic books, and, maybe there's a whole section about different directors, or a whole section about different animators, or whatever it is. So I think it's cool to categorize it in a way that you'll be able to easily find what you need, because that's the point of owning them. But we still do a good amount of rainbow organization for people who either don't have that many books, or they're more about holding on to them because they have, intrinsic value, they have emotional value, they like the way they look, and then, do whatever looks pretty to you. So,
yeah, amazing.
Oh, wait, one more thing. You want to label the sections if possible. Mm. So let's say you do, you have your novels, you have your this, you have your that. Whatever kinds of shelving you're using, I would label the sections so you remember, because let's say you have 1,000 books, you're not going to remember what the sections are a year from now. You might think you will, and then you're going to find yourself searching around. So just tiny little, I think of them as like breadcrumbs you're leaving for yourself. Just do it, because it'll save you so much time and brain power in the future. Just put a few labels on there. So,
well, then you're also held accountable by the label for like putting it back in the right position, right? If you take like, oh, I need a couple of these, or I'm going away from the weekend, I need to take some reference books. Then you come back and you're like, oh, shove them on the shelf. Oh, wait, those aren't all that.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And it keeps other people accountable if someone's in your house is using your books, or, I mean, it's less about books and more in other spaces like the pantry. I would say if you're sharing a space with someone, labeling holds other people accountable, because if you have a basket where all the pasta goes, to you, it might be like, obviously pasta goes there because there's only pasta in there. But as soon as someone else in your household puts a box of cereal in there, then someone else will be like, well, maybe it's pasta and cereal, I'll put some crackers in there too. And then before you know it, the system's fully fallen apart. But if it said pasta on there in a way that everyone could see it, it's so much more likely to be maintained. And so same goes with the books. And one other sort of tenet of organization that I feel like can be useful for people here is, let's say you do have a limited amount of storage space for your books. If you have things sort of organized to capacity within categories, it will keep you accountable. So let's say you buy a bunch more books, then you know that you have certain boundaries for different categories. You need to get rid of some before you put the new ones away, so you don't exceed your system that you built for yourself.
That's great. So what are some of I know we've already highlighted some of these, but what do you like posit as some of the biggest takeaways for creatives if they get their space organized? What kind of results can they see
I
from that?
think that as creative people, we need a certain amount of sort of like visual clarity, mental clarity, and quiet, whether it's, audible quiet, emotional quiet, visual quiet, to be able to let our creativity come through. And I just love the feeling of a clean, clear space. And so I think that, like, especially as a creative, if you ever feel stuck or you have blocks or you're trying to figure out sort of like, what do I do next? Or what's the next line in this book I'm writing or whatever, clean off your desk. It's like magic, I think, and it brings new energy in. It clears your mind out, and I just think that that's the biggest benefit. I don't know if there's the science behind it or what it is, but I see it time and time and time again that there is magic in decluttering, and there is magic in sort of intentionally laying out your space to enjoy it and to create good things in this world. And there's just something about it that works.
You hear that, listeners? It's not procrastinating for you to pause and clean your desk when you can't come
No.
up with what that character's doing next. It's actually going to help, according to Juliana. So that's great. Thank you so
Oh, it
much.
totally will. Yeah. Don't think about it for a while. Just go do, if I'm ever stuck on anything, like stuck on a project, I'll go like do dishes or clean out my sock drawer or like just something that will make you think differently. And then it's like, it's why all those good ideas come in the shower, right? Like you're doing something else and you're taking the pressure off. And then that little creative thing can just sort of jump into your brain when you least expect it. And you'll be like, I got it. And then you can go sit back down on your beautiful clear desk and write it. And then there you go. You're done.
So, for those who are not in the LA area, what resources do you have in order to teach them how to organize their space?
A- Absolutely. So if you don't live in Los Angeles, there's a few ways that we can continue to work together. One, follow us on Instagram. We have lots of great content. You can DM us. I sometimes do Instagram live. I ask questions. You can ask me questions, all that. So that's a really fun, easy, free way of getting some organizing tips and advice. Two, we have a course. So during the pandemic, when everyone was stuck at home, I was doing a little bit of virtual organizing for people. And it struck me that all some people needed was just like a little bit more hand holding than what they could get from reading a book or listening to a podcast or watching a TV show. So from doing a lot of these virtual sessions, I outlined this course it's 7 lessons, and each of them has a video component. It has like workbook components. There's quizzes, there's shopping lists. Like I poured everything I know about organizing into this course. It took me over a year to make it, and it's available on our website. And once you buy it, you have it in perpetuity, and you can ask us questions, all kinds of stuff. So that really has been so useful for so many of our clients. And it's also how I train our organizers here in Los Angeles. So they take the course and then they get hands-on training as well. But it teaches them how to organize for us, so it can teach you how to organize for yourself. And it really is such a great resource. So those are the 2 main ways that we can work together. And yeah, I look forward to, getting to know all of you guys.
Amazing. Thank you again so much for being here. And listener, please put in the comments if you took anything from this video and organized your space and how that's feeling different. I mean, it's seriously, I can't say it enough. It made such a world of difference for me. And while I do have a couple of straight papers as I look around the desk, really I've been able to keep up with what I originally started with. And that has to have been almost 2 months ago. And so it will make a difference. And, we're always trying to find the ways to keep ourselves inspired and motivated to work on our writing. And this is a great thing to keep in mind that might be holding you back from feeling inspired in your space. So thank you again, Juliana, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I could talk about this forever. And let's stay in touch. I can't wait to see how everything progresses for you.
All the links will be in the show description, so you can reach out to Juliana, follow her on Instagram, find all of her e-course information. So check that out. Until next time.